Psalm 47. Clap your hands, all peoples. Shout to God with loud songs of joy. For Yahweh, the Most High, is to be feared. A great king over all the earth. He subdued peoples under us and nations under our feet. He chose our heritage for us, the pride of Jacob, whom he loves. God has gone up with a shout, Yahweh with the sound of a trumpet. Sing praises to God. Sing praises. Sing praises to our King. Sing praises. For God is the King of all the earth. Sing praises with a psalm. God reigns over the nations. God sits on his holy throne. The princes of the peoples gather as the people of the God of Abraham. For the shields of the earth belong to God. He is highly exalted. And some of your translations will say in that last line, he has highly exalted himself. Also a good way to translate that phrase there. This is simply a praise song to God, right? And it's a song that specifically is meant to be sung by Jews, and you can see them referring to their cultural heritage when they were brought into the promised land in Joshua, and then they went and had to fight all those battles. You know, he says he subdued peoples under us and nations under our feet. And then it says, and he chose our inheritance for us. Now, that's really good news, okay? And the reason that's good news is because God's plans for his people are better than our plans are for ourselves. We tend to aim too low, right? We tend to aim for things that would be satisfying for us, or even, good for our children and grandchildren. But then God's plans come in and they span all of the globe and all of the timeline and all of this stuff. And there's no way that we can think high enough thoughts to desire the things that he actually has for his children. So like with the Israelite culture that went into the promised land, how would they have known all of the incredible victories that they were going to have? How would they have known what the promised land was going to be like in those times, those seemingly rare times when they were obeying the law? God says, look, this land is going to flow with milk and honey. Yeah, they could have thought that stuff up, but they could not put a plan together to accomplish it for themselves. They were the least of all peoples, God says. He's like, that's why I picked you. That's why I formed you the way that I did, is because you are incapable of attaining for yourself the things that I want for you. I choose your inheritance for you. And so, similarly, you see Jesus showing up and he's like, hey, I'm here to bring the kingdom of God and I will give it to the children of God, right? This is an inheritance. Romans 8 says we freely inherit all things with Christ. But when he showed up and he offered this to people, they didn't want it. They chose a different inheritance, right? So when that's Paul's point in Ephesians 2, when he says that we are spiritually dead, we're going to choose the wrong inheritance, right? You can't look at a corpse and say, hey, make a good decision now, right? God has to come in and say, I'm going to make you alive. I'm going to show you what real life actually is. And then when you lurch towards that and you choose life over death, it's going to be because God initiated and you responded. So the fact that he chooses our inheritance for us is really, really good news when you have a God who's so infinitely above your way of thinking, right? Because then when he leverages that eternal wisdom, that eternal knowledge that he has with his eternal power to execute on it, you end up being blessed. You end up being saved, right? You end up getting things that there's no way you can get. This is another deficiency in the prosperity gospel. It just aims too low. Like, what's your inheritance from God? Health, wealth, and prosperity. Yeah, there are a lot of people that are going to die and burn in hell that have health, wealth, and prosperity in this world. It doesn't do them any good past their last breath. And a lot of people realize this on their deathbed. I should have left a better inheritance to my kids. I should have chosen something different for them. Should have chosen something different for myself. But God chooses our inheritance for us in the kingdom of God. And then he welcomes us into that kingdom through the blood of the cross and with the faith that we place in him. That's kind of the entry card to get in. And we have an inheritance that Christ deserves, not one that we deserve. So that's your gospel for this morning. God chooses the inheritance of his children. That's good stuff. And we should be glad that he is directing our paths and we are not, because we would end up with an inferior inheritance. C.S. Lewis put it this way, that we are far too easily pleased. He says we're like children playing with mud pies, and we're like, oh yeah, this is a great mud pie. I love this mud pie, not understanding that there's a whole banquet right there. And God's like, hey, let me bring you over here. So he loves you. He's looking out for you. He's doing good things for you, even if he's not doing things about the bad stuff in your life at the moment that would take them away. We know that he's operating in a higher realm to work all these things together for good for those who love him, and those who are called according to his purpose. In other words, he chooses our inheritance for us, right? So Psalm 47 has some really good news for the children of God, and it applies only to the children of God. So bask in that, and whatever your day holds for you, just know that God is doing something over the top of all of that lasts longer than whatever struggles you've got to fight today. Persevere and go through them and trust his plan. It's a good one.